And so tonight we're going to be in Luke chapter 12 as we look at the parable of the rich fool. Parable of the rich fool. All right, well, let's just dig in. We'll read the whole thing and we'll back up and talk about it. And I want to begin reading in verse 13 so we can get a little bit of context for the parable that Jesus tells here. Luke chapter 12, verse 13. Then one from the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Man, who made me a judge or an arbitrator over you?" And he said to them, "Take heed and beware of covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of the things he possesses." Then he spoke a parable to them, saying, "The ground of a certain rich man yielded plentifully. And he thought within himself, saying, What shall I do, since I have no room to store my crops? So he said, I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build greater barns or bigger barns, and there I will store all my crops and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have many goods laid up for many years. Take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, Fool, this night your soul will be required of you. Then whose will those things be which you have provided? So is he who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God." All right, let's back up and talk about this just a little bit. So, what is the context that is going, what's going on that sparks Jesus to tell this parable? Yeah, a man approaches Jesus and it says, "Tell my brother." It sounds like a spoiled brat, doesn't he? "Tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." So the man asked Jesus to settle a dispute, and Jesus perceives that the man has a problem. And what does Jesus perceive his problem being? Greed, right? And we know that from verse 15. He said, "Take heed and beware of covetousness," or greed, "for one's life does not consist in the abundance of things." So the man Jesus understands the man's motivation is one of greed, one of covetousness, and that's what sparks him to tell this parable. Now, the man makes this request of Jesus: "Tell my brother to split the inheritance with me, or divide the inheritance with me. Give me my fair share." But what did the man's request of Jesus demonstrate about the man? Right. So the man, there's a couple of things the man doesn't understand. One is he doesn't understand Jesus' purpose. Jesus said, I'm not an arbitrator over you. God didn't send Jesus into the world to be Judge Judy at the people's court and settle little family squabbles like that. That's not his purpose in coming, and that's why Jesus says, "I'm not an arbitrator over you. Work it out yourself. That's not what I'm here for." But the man didn't understand something else. What also did he not understand? He's worried about what? I want my fair share. What should he have been worried about? His soul. He's worried about earthly, temporal money, and what he should have been worried about was his eternal destiny. So he didn't understand Jesus' purpose, nor did he understand his own spiritual need. Think about it. If you had Jesus Christ right here, like he's standing right here, and you can approach Jesus and you can ask him anything in the world. You can say anything to him. You can make any request of him. You can ask him any question. If you just want to fall down at his feet and worship, you can do that. You have the opportunity, whatever you want to do. How are you going to spend that opportunity? Hey, Jesus, make my brother give me my inheritance. Is that how you're going to wait? Is that how you're going to waste that opportunity? That's how this man wasted his opportunity, right? So, what is the life principle that Jesus states in these verses? Verse 15 especially. What's the life principle here? There you go. At the end of the day, the most important things in life aren't things, right? That's boy, if our world could learn a lesson on that, that would be a wonderful lesson to learn. The most important things in life aren't things. Questions on those verses before we move on to the parable itself? All right, so in the parable, Jesus tells this parable about a rich man whose the ground yielded plentifully, and his barn, and he gets so much that his barns get full, and he says, I don't know what I'm going to do. What am I going to do? And finally says, I know what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns, and I'll build bigger barns, and then I'll have plenty to live for the rest of my life. And Jesus says, you're a fool, because the rest of your life is tonight. And you made no provision for eternity. So, incidentally, this is probably the only time in Scripture that retirement savings is spoken of, and it's not spoken of in a very positive light. Now, I don't think that means that retirement savings are bad or against God's will, per se. But it is interesting that the one time that we get someone actually trying to put away for his retirement, it's kind of condemned here. How did the man in Jesus' parable acquire his wealth? Yeah, God gave him this fertile land that he's able to grow, abundantly. I mean, it wasn't his smart savviness that caused his land to produce well. And notice what do we also know about the man even before he decides to tear down bigger barns, even before his land is producing all this, what do we know about him? The ground of a certain rich man. So this wasn't someone who was a poor dirt farmer just barely getting by, and then all of a sudden he comes into a little bit of money and he says, well, what am I going to do with this? Here's a man who's already rich. He's already wealthy. Now he's got more, and he's got so much more that his barns won't hold it all. So he asks the question, what am I going to do with this extra wealth? So what are you going to do? What can you do with extra money? Well, there's three things, and only three things, that you can do with money. What are they? You can spend it, you can save it, or you can give it away. That's the only three things you can do with money. You can do one of those three things with money, but that's the only three things you can do with it. So whatever his answer is going to be, it's either going to be spend it, save it, or give it away. And I would draw your attention to this. The man's question was a good one. He says, what am I going to do? He says, I've got so much wealth that I don't have anywhere to put it. What am I going to do now? That's a good question. That's not a bad question. That's a good question. But it's a lousy answer. Because what does he decide to do? I'm going to build bigger barns and hoard up more. More than, notice, he's already rich. He's already got more than he needs. And his solution is, I'll just hoard up even more. And what does he plan on doing eventually with this? Well, if you look in 19, he says, I'll say to my soul, you have many goods for many years. Take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry. Okay, that's sort of, when you see that phrase in Scripture, eat, drink, and be merry, that's sort of code words for I'm going to live a hedonistic lifestyle. I'm going to live like the prodigal son. I'm going to go out and enjoy and indulge in riotous living. That's kind of the idea behind that. If I tell you I'm going out to eat, drink, and be merry, that probably means I'm going to Hammett House and have dessert. But if in Scripture, when someone is said to be going to eat, drink, and be merry, that means I'm going to live it up, so to speak. And it has a negative connotation. In other words, he's not going to be living it up for the Lord. He's going to be living it up for himself. Very selfish, self-centered idea that he has here. Yes, sir. Sure, yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Sure, yeah. Yeah, if you notice, everything he says, it's all about me and mine and my stuff, my this, my that. So, very selfish. Yeah, absolutely. So, he comes up with this idea. I'm going to tear down my barns and I'm going to build bigger barns. What's wrong with this idea? Yeah, I mean, why do you need that? Well, first of all, what's it motivated by? Is it motivated by faith? It's motivated by greed. So anything that's motivated by greed is probably not going to be a good thing. I pointed out in 19 his plan to retire to this hedonistic lifestyle. He didn't need any more wealth, did he? I mean, he was already rich. Now God has given him even more. What does he need more for? Yes. Start over. Was there enmity between the two brothers? I would say so. I mean, yeah, I would say that there was. Two things tend to bring out the worst in people, and that's death and money. You put those two together, and it can get pretty ugly sometimes. So, yeah, he was already rich. He didn't need any more wealth. He was already rich. Why do we think? So there's a in the young Indiana Jones. I'm a big Indiana Jones fan. You already knew that. In the young Indiana Jones Chronicles, there's one episode called "The Treasure of the Peacock's Eye," and so young Indiana Jones is and his friend are going around looking for this treasure, and he says, somebody asked him, I don't remember if it was the friend or another character asked him, says, what do you want to find this treasure for? He said, so I can make my dreams come true. He said, what are your dreams? He said, I want to be an archaeologist. He said, you're already an archaeologist. You're already going to be an archaeologist. He said, why are you wasting your life searching for a treasure that you don't need? And I think that describes so many people in our world today. They have everything they need. They don't need more than what they've got. They have what they need, but they're wasting their life searching for a treasure that they really don't need. And that seems to be the man in the parable here. So what mistake did the man make that many people still make today? Always want more. Right, yeah. You know, it's weird. Some of the wealthiest people I've known in my life have been some of the most miserable. And some of the happiest people I've known in my life didn't have two nickels to rub together, but they were happy, you know. Kind of odd, isn't it? So how much money did the millionaire leave behind when he died? All of it. All of it. You know, he focused on his wants rather than his needs. Sometimes Lisa and or the Holy Spirit, and sometimes they tag team against me to remind me of needs and wants, you know. We go to Bass Pro Shop and I see a bass boat and I go, I need that. And Lisa goes, we need to have a little talk about needs and wants, you know. Two different things there. So he focused on wants rather than needs. He focused on the temporal rather than the eternal. In other words, the things that don't last over the things that do. And he focused on the material over the spiritual. And people do the same thing today. That he was in control? Sure, and I think he had the illusion that a lot of people do. If I can somehow get enough wealth, then I will be in control. But you're not. As the man found in the parable finds out, you know, you're going to die tonight and you can't take any of it with you. So he had made no preparations whatsoever for what happens after this life, only what's happening in the life. Sure, yeah. Yes, sir. Yeah. 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 And he went away sorrowful, you know. Exactly. You know, his thoughts are on acquiring treasures on earth rather than treasures in heaven. And what does Jesus say? Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. You know, when we were in Wellington, I had this guy, and I won't give you his name. I mean, he wouldn't care for me telling you, but I won't. But I'll just call him Joe. His name wasn't really Joe, but I'll just call him Joe. And Joe, he had a big tract of land out in West Texas and in Wellington area, and he let me and the boys dove hunt on his land and everything. And I was out there. We were out there one day, and I was just talking to him. He was one of my church members, you know. And I was out there talking to him. We had been hunting, and I was just kind of visiting with him, you know. And I said, Joe, you got you a really nice place here, really pretty place here. He said, yeah, you know, I used to say that. He said, in fact, I used to stand at my back doorstep every day, and I'd look out and I'd say, look out there. Just as far as I can see, that all belongs to me. He said, the Lord spoke to me one day, and he said, yeah, and the last guy that owned it stood right there where you're standing and said the exact same thing. And he said, you know, it taught me that it's not really mine. It's the Lord, and he's letting me use it, and when he gets ready, it'll go to somebody else, you know. But he had a good attitude. I don't know that, you know, by his own testimony, it might not have started out as a great attitude, but when the Lord got done working on him, he had a good attitude towards what the Lord had blessed him with. Questions on those verses? Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it is idolatry because what becomes your God? Your money, right? or whatever it is you're coveting. All right, so we get the Jesus gives the application to his parable in verse 21. So is he who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. So the moral of Jesus' parable is to invest your life in the things that are eternal, not the things that are temporal or temporary. You can say temporal or temporary, either one. It's like the guy who's told his friend, he said, when I die, I want to be buried in a solid gold coffin. And his friend said, why in the world do you want to be buried in a solid gold coffin? You'll be dead. He said, yeah, but I want all the people at my funeral, when they see that solid gold coffin being lowered down into the grave, I want them to look and say, man, that's really living. So, yeah. So, you know, that's the irony. That's the joke of it, is that we work so hard for the treasures of this world, and in the end, you can't take it with you when you die. All right. So, who wants to play my game? Who wants to play a game with me? You want to play a game? All right. I'm going to give you a $5 bill. What are you going to do with your $5 bill? Okay. Who else wants to play a game with me? It doesn't have to be a churchy answer. I'm not necessarily looking for one. What would you do? $5 bill. I'll give you a $5 bill. What would you do with it? Give it to somebody. So, what did he say? There you go. I like that answer too. Yeah. So, you can do a lot of things with a $5 bill. You can get a cup of coffee at Egbert's, not at Starbucks, not for $5. You can go get a cup of coffee with it. You can buy a lottery ticket with it. What else can you do with it? You can buy a gallon of gas with it, yeah. And that's about all you can buy is 1 gallon of it, yeah. Now, there's nothing wrong with buying a cup of coffee with a $5 bill. There's nothing wrong with buying a gallon of gas. There may or may not be something wrong with buying a lottery ticket, but we'll save that sermon for a different day, right? My point being is that you can use that for a lot of different things that aren't necessarily inherently bad. But let's be a little bit wise. You got a $5 bill that you wasn't counting on getting. So what am I going to do with that? Well, I could take that $5 bill. I could give that to the Gideons. They can take that $5 bill and they can buy a Bible. For $5, they can buy a Bible that goes in the hotel room. Ever been in the hotel room and you open the little drawer and there's a Bible in there? You ever wonder how much it costs to put one of those in there? $5. $5 bill will put a Bible in a hotel room. Guess how many people potentially will read that Bible in this roughly 6-year lifespan that Bible is in that hotel room? This is coming from Gideon's International. I want to take a guess how many people they say potentially can be reached by that one Bible? 2,300 people. 2,300 people potentially will read that Bible. Now, here's the thing. Nothing wrong with buying a cup of coffee. Nothing wrong with buying a gallon of gas. But I'm going to drink that cup of coffee, and I'm not going to have it with me when I go to heaven, right? I'm going to put that gallon of gas in my car, and by the time I get to Tulsa, it's going to be used up. I'm not going to have that in heaven. But how cool would it be when you get to heaven for somebody that you've never met before come up to you and they say, I just want to thank you. And you say, man, I don't even know you. What are you thanking me for? And you say, or they say, well, You gave $5 to put a Bible in a hotel. And I was ready to commit suicide one night. And I opened up that drawer in that hotel and I got that Bible and I started reading it. And I gave my heart to Jesus that night. And I'm here today because of what you did back then. Now how are you going to spend your $5 bill? That seems to be the idea there, is invest in things that are eternal, not the things that are here today and gone tomorrow. So we have this idea. So here's the thing, and we don't want to get to one extreme or the other, because we're taught to practice stewardship, and part of that is in making good choices, good investments, all of those things. And then we have this parable here that says we're to focus on the eternal. So how would you balance the idea of stewardship with the warning that's taught in this parable? Yeah, I mean, it all should glorify God, right? So, in the words of that great theologian, Mick Jagger, he said with a wink and a grin, you can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need. And that seems to be, in a far more eloquent way, what Jesus is saying 2,000 years before Mick Jagger said it, is that if the Lord gives us what we need, we shouldn't be consumed with the greed for the things that we want. Absolutely. There is never a time when there's not an opportunity to invest in the kingdom. Never, there is never a time. You can give to Lottie Moon. You don't have to give to Lottie Moon only at Christmas. They take money 365 days a year. We focus on it at Christmas, but you can do it anytime. So what are we saying here? 100% of our wealth should glorify God. We have this misunderstanding, and I think maybe in large part it's the misunderstanding comes from Baptist preachers that have preached, have emphasized maybe the wrong thing. But we get this idea because we hype tithe, that if I give the Lord 10% of my money, that's the tithe, then the other 90% is mine to do with what I want to. Now, is that what the Bible teaches? Not at all. How much of my money is the Lord's? All of it. Now, to be sure, He expects me to pay my light bill and buy my groceries. I think He even expects me to take my kids to Disney World every once in a while. I mean, I think that's part of being a good dad. But when I'm using that money in ways that aren't glorifying to God, and part of that can be the greed of hoarding it up, then that's certainly not good. Motivation is the key. What is it that's motivating you to spend your money the way you do? What motivates you to do this? Needs and wants are two different things. So just ponder. This is a question to ponder. And you're not going to answer it quickly. Ponder it. Take it home. Think about it. What would your calendar and your checkbook look like if you wanted the things of God more than anything? If you want to know what is the most important to you, what does your calendar and your checkbook say? It'll tell you. You want to know where your priorities lie? Open your calendar and your checkbook, and you'll see where your priorities lie. My question is, if you wanted the things of God more than anything, if that was your number one desire, what would your calendar, what would your checkbook look like? So, how big should my barns be? Yeah, it should be big enough to hold what you need, but not necessarily everything you want. And I think therein is the rub. Here's the thing. This was, and this was every once in a while as you study along, the Lord just kind of gives you a thought. And this was kind of the thought that the Lord gave me as I was studying through this. That, the disciples come to Jesus and they say, teach us to pray. And what did he teach them to pray? Give us this day what? Our daily bread. He didn't teach them to pray for full barns, did he? He didn't say, you pray, Father, fill my barns. What do you say? Give me today my daily bread. The idea being, you give me today what I need, and I'm going to trust you that you're going to give me what I need tomorrow. Because when we start to focus too much on filling up our barns, then our priorities gets all out of whack. How much is enough? Well, I've come to the conclusion, and I say this about myself because I'm a weak man. You may think that I'm not, he's a spiritual giant, but really, I am a weak person. And I have found that there's a reason why the Lord didn't make me rich. It's because that I can't handle it. I don't believe I would handle it in a way. Let me put it this way. I think there would be a strong temptation to handle the what God give me in a way that's not honoring to Him. What I have found in my own life, and I think it's true in most men's lives, it's good for a man to be a little bit broke and a little bit busy. Sure enough, you can be too broke and you can be too busy, and those aren't good either. But a little bit broke and a little bit busy is a good thing. Why do I say that? Because if you have extra time and extra money, the devil will always give you something to do with that extra time and extra money. And I'm yet to have the devil tell me something to do with my extra time and extra money that glorifies the Lord. And so I think the Lord just, for my own sake, said, Mark, I'm going to give you just what you need. Not a whole lot. And as I look back over our married life, and it'll be 30 years in June, I don't know that I could ever point to a time in our life where we had a lot of extra money, where we sat around going, oh, honey, what are we going to do with all this money we got? Like, I don't ever remember a time like that, but I'll tell you this, neither do I remember a time in those 30 years that we really needed something that the Lord didn't provide. Sometimes miraculously. Sometimes, it's, you go to bed, you're going, okay, I don't know how in the world are we going to, I got to pay for the kids' braces and allergy shots and the transmission's out on the truck and I can't pay my light bill. What are we going to do? And the next thing you know, here's a check in the mail from, some bill you overpaid 6 months ago that you forgot about, and it's just the right amount. And that happened more than once. So how big should my barns be? Well, big enough for what you need, but don't try to hoard up what you don't need is the idea. Questions on those verses, that parable? I'll give you a couple little application questions that we can have some fun with. Here's the first one. Johnny and Susan are a young married couple just starting out. Johnny has a good job at the factory in town. Susan works at a local bank, but she wants to quit work to stay home with their newborn son. Johnny encourages her to continue working so they can afford the payments on the new pickup and bass boat he just purchased. Johnny doesn't come to church anymore because he works an extra shift on Sunday to pay for his new quarter horse and trailer. What might Johnny learn from Jesus' parable? He better learn the number to a good divorce lawyer because I think Susan's probably going to. Oh, I tell you what, I don't know that my dad ever was guilty of coming forth with a lot of great pearls of wisdom. I didn't enter adulthood with a lot of great words of wisdom from my dad. But one thing he said that I think there was some wisdom to. He said, "Son, if you can't make a living working 5 days a week, there ain't no point in trying to kill yourself working Saturday and Sunday." Now, to you, that might sound like laziness, and it certainly may not fit with that great American work ethic, but I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. Because what he was saying is, you work for what you need, but don't spend your whole life working and never have time to enjoy the life and the family that you're working for. What I would say to Johnny is that kids grow up quick, or quickly, I guess it would be the correct adverb for that. Kids grow up quickly and life passes by fast, and you can't ride that quarter horse to heaven. And here's what, and I've had many young men tell me this exact same thing, this exact same story. This is hypothetical, but it could be any one of a dozen different young men I've talked to over my years of ministry. And invariably they'll say something like this: "Well, preacher, I'm doing this for my family. I can't come to church, I'm working extra shifts for my family." And to which I usually say, "Boy, if you don't slow down, you're not going to have a family left to work for." And sure enough, they don't. I mean, about 99% of the time, those kind of marriages end in divorce. And it's sad, but that is the reality. Make a living for your family. The Bible says you're supposed to. A man that won't make a living for his family is worse than an infidel. But a man who won't quit working long enough to enjoy his family, he's not a really good guy either. So there's a balance there that we have to find. Okay, here's the last one. Now, I started you off with a little amount, $5. Let's make it a little more interesting. Let's up the ante a little bit. Pardon the poker reference there. Let's say I handed you a check for $10 million. $10 million. What are you going to do with it? You what? Take it and run, yeah. Well, yeah. Okay, so let's say that it wouldn't be a hot check, that you understand that somehow or another I was connected to some sort of millionaire benefactor that actually would make the check good, yeah. What would you do? Yes, sir. Yeah. True. So, yeah. We would probably ask the same question that the man asked: "What shall I do?" So, like I said, there's three things you can do. You can spend it, you can save it, you can give it away. And I think, I kind of set you up to say give it away. And certainly that's good. I mean, I think, you take out of it what you need. Pay off your debt, I would say. I would say get out of debt. Make sure that your family has what they need, not what they want, what they need. But let's just say it's extra money. Say you don't really, you're paying the bills, you're meeting expenses. What would you do? You can give it all away, or you can get a little creative. And this is where I think wise stewardship plays a little bit of a role. Now let's think about this. I have $10 million. I give that $10 million to you. You can give it all away right then. And then how much money have you given away? $10 million, right? Or you can take that $10 million and you can invest it in a relatively safe mutual fund. And let's just say, for simplicity's sake, you can average 10% a year annually on that, which you really don't have to have a very good mutual fund to get 10%. I mean, 12% is what most of the benchmarks will say. If you ought to be able to get 12% easy. You're not going to do that every year, but over the long haul, that's what you're going to average. But for simplicity's sake, let's just say you average 10%. What's 10% of $10 million? $1 million. Now, I can take, after a year, I can take $1 million that I've made in interest, and I can go and I can fund that mission trip. That mission here. I can go to Honduras and I can say, here's $1 million. What could $1 million in Honduras do? You can go to some place in Africa that has no clean water and you can say, here's $1 million, dig yourself a well. You can change somebody's life. You could go to the projects in Harlem and you could find some single mother who's struggling to make ends meet, struggling to provide for her kids, and you say, here's $1 million. Get out of this place, get somewhere that's safe. There's money for you, there's money for your kids, there's money for your kids to go to college, so that not only do you and your family, you and your kids have something, your grandkids and great-grandkids won't ever have to be in the situation that you're in. You can change a life like that. Now, I've given away $1 million. How much do I still have in the mutual fund? $10 million. Next year, what do I get? Another $1 million. I can give that away. Now I can come to a church. Say, hey, y'all want to build a new building? Here's $1 million. Go build it. And the next year, how much do I have? $1 million. I have $10 million, and the interest on that's $1 million. And so I can give away $1 million for the rest of my life. Now, let's say I'm even a little bit smarter than that. Let's say instead of setting it up just in a mutual account with my name on it, let's say I put it in a trust that will continue for perpetuity. That means that even after I die, how much is coming off that mutual fund? Provided I'm still getting my 10%, $1 million. And that money can go to help poor people or missions or churches that I've never met before. Maybe there's a church in Germany that's trying to start up and they need money. Here's $1 million. And it really didn't cost me anything. And I could continue to hand out $1 million long after I'm dead until Jesus comes back. And what did it cost me? Didn't cost me anything. I handed you a check for $10 million. And so this is I think how you balance wise stewardship with the idea of not being caught up in things. But notice, what's my motivation in that? Is my motivation greed and meeting my wants? What's my motivation? Helping people. And so I'm just thinking of the best way to do that, you see? So here's the thing. It's not about whether you ever have $10 million. It's about how you answer the question, you see? Oh, Brother Mark, you know you don't never have $10 million to give that. I know that. It's not about whether I ever have it or you ever get it. It's about how would you answer the question. Because what you do have is the same question. Now, you don't have $10 million. I don't have $10 million. I get a paycheck twice a month, just like probably most of you do. But I still have to ask the same question, what am I going to do with this? My question has to be the same as the question, what shall I do? Well, obviously, I've got bills to pay and I've got food to buy, but then I also have to ask myself, what am I doing? What am I investing in that's going to last after I'm gone? And that's the question that the man never asked. All right, questions or comments? Fun little parable tonight. So, all right, we'll close in a word of prayer. Good to see y'all. Have a good week, and we will see you back Sunday.